succeed with implementing lean? Because lean is talked about, lean is being practiced, and from what I see as I walk through various different organizations, different companies, the way lean is being practiced is very different. And when I compare with what they do and compare the results that they get, they may be getting some results, some good results, I don't say no. They may be moving from point A to point B, they may be solving some problems. But the question is, you see, the ultimate test of lean is how your customer benefits. In the examples I gave you, the kind of cost benefits, price changes that you can do favoring your customer. That's something like the ultimate test of lean. Have you succeeded? Okay? So today what I will do is share some thoughts, some ideas, some secrets of Toyota production system. They try to copy Toyota production system. They try to copy elements of Toyota production system. But the thing is that Toyota production system can only be implemented by Toyota and nobody else. Why? Toyota production system is designed for Toyota. It's not designed for any other industry. Okay? So, you cannot try to implement Toyota production system and expect to succeed with it. It will not work for you. Your environment, your variables, your customer demands, your culture is very different, and so EPS per se will not work for you. Unfortunately, a lot of teachings in India and also, I must say, in other parts of the world happen based on the modules of Toyota production system. You make an improvement from point A to point B, but will you become lean the way Toyota is, the way you saw the example of Mysore Kirloskar, or the Bridgeport joint venture, or even the kind of productivity that Electronica was able to produce, or the examples of Maruthi I gave you, the others? The answer is no. Not many have been able to replicate such results. Okay? You must know you are not a Toyota, and so you cannot implement the Toyota production system. Blind copy will never work. So what do you have to do if this blind copy never works? In a lot of these attempts that are made or teachings that are taught, what is done? The whole teaching has been built into small modules of different tools. They will probably tell you, first draw a value stream map, and you will identify all the wastes through that, and then use some simple tools like problem solving tools, 5S, some visual controls, and start solving these problems to remove waste and become lean. They will also tell you, start some pilot project, do it in a smaller area, prove it, satisfy yourself, so that you can now convince the others that it actually works. That means they want you to begin with a premise of doubt that it will not work, and teach you some of these tools like Pokayo, SWED, total productive maintenance, Kanban, cellular layouts, etc. But in reality, Toyota actually uses more than 90 tools. And any of these organizations or consultants, people, training organizations that come to you and try to tell you that we will teach you how to become lean, probably will not know more than 8, 10, 12 of these tools. They will teach you the tools and may forget or not teach you how to imbibe the principles. Tools without the principles are meaningless. Tools are just to solve problems. Okay? In an 80-20 ratio, the tools would only play 20% role. 80% is something else which I will explain to you today. And if you don't have that 80%, it doesn't matter how much you work with 20%, you will never achieve lean results. Let's look at some basic requirements before you start. The very first question would be, why do you want to become lean? Is it because it is a fad? Is it the fashion of day that you should become lean? Is it because somebody is saying you should become lean? Is it because the government has put up a program called the Investor Program where the government has said that MSMEs have to become more productive? What is the reason why? Why do you want to become lean? Are you not happy the way you are doing what you are doing? If your company is running a business and making some money, why are you dissatisfied? Why do you want to become lean? Okay? There has to be a reason why. Toyota had a reason why after the Second World War, which I explained to you in the morning. We had a reason why in Mysore, Kirloskar, which I explained to you in the morning. I had a reason in the Bridgeport factory, which I explained to you. Electronica had a reason, explained to you. Maruthi had a reason. I explained that to you in the morning. There has to be a reason why. If there is no reason why, it's like playing football without a goalpost. Where will you shoot? Anywhere and everywhere. Okay? So, there should be a reason why. There should be driving hard passion. Burn. There should be a burn in your stomach to become lean. You have to be hungry. That has to be the only singular goal. Your focus has to be like a laser beam. Nothing else comes in the way. It has to be the number one strategic goal of the organization, company as a whole. Chairman to the last employee in the organization and the last vendor in the supply chain. Do you have that burn? Are you that hungry? What sacrifices are you ready to make to become lean? What sacrifices are you willing to make to get those kinds of results? If there is no fire, if there is no passion, how will you become lean? Becoming lean is a transformation, is a cultural change. How will you bring a culture change if there is no driving passion? Okay? So are you willing to change? Unfortunately, people understand lean as creating change around, within the factory. You change the machines, you change the systems, you change the layouts, you change, the supplier, you change the drawing, you change many things. Unfortunately, people think change means that. No, that is not the change. That change will never make you lean. Are you willing to change inside you? Are you willing to change your thinking, your behavior, your daily routine? Are you teachable? Can you be taught? Are you willing to be teachable? Can you teach? Can you teach? You can only teach if you can learn. After you learn. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of commitment, it takes a lot of perseverance, it takes a lot of faith, vision, hope, passion. It's more of these and not just the intellectual part that's going to make you get lean. It does require good quality of thinking, but it takes a lot of such things. Do you have the patience? Do you have the commitment? What is commitment? Measure what you say with the actions that you do. If you have completed doing what you have said, you are committed. If not, you are not committed. And if you actually measure this on a day-to-day basis, don't be surprised, but I find most people are not really committed. There's a gap. This gap will work against you when you want to implement lean. You won't be told this because it doesn't fit into any module. But when you undertake a journey, when you go from one side of the mountain to the top of it, that's when you will realize, what it takes. So today I'm going to share with you that part of lean that probably is never told by most people, because most have not done the journey. There is no standard way. There is no one process, one method. Nothing is written in stone that if you want to become lean, this is what you do first. First step, second step, third step, fourth step. No. Every organization is different. Every company is different. Different customer demands, different environment, different variables, different culture, different thinking, different levels of thinking. So the journey of lean, you see, lean is a strategy subject. And so the journey of lean needs to be designed specifically for each organization. And so you need to first learn how to design your lean journey. Lean is not something that is in compartments or you can tackle in small elements. It's an end-to-end solution. Customer to the last vendor, all inclusive at the same time. So there is no template how to become lean. Lean implementation is something that has to be led, demonstrated. It can't be talk. Won't work. No. It's by do and show. Do and show. Keep doing until people who see you doing learn how to do. That is demonstration. That is leading. A leader leads by example, by doing, not by talk. Okay? If you read the history of Toyota, what did E.G. Toyota, Daiichi Ono do? They led this journey. They did this by themselves. Daiichi Ono even used to go, to the factory during night shifts when workmen were not there and try out processes just to know whether they will work or not work. And then he would come back and lead by showing people what to do and how. Could he have not sat in his office and given a beautiful talk to people? If you do like this, or this is the way to do, it doesn't work. So let me show you what I did in the transformations that I have done that actually succeeded and made it to work. So our journey, I'll give you two examples. For want of time, I could have given you more. Now, this is an example just to tell you how we started this journey in Mysore, Kirloskar. Way back in 1991. How did we start? This gentleman, a professor in a California university, went on a study tour to Japan, and he went there to study the Japanese manufacturing. He wanted to find out what are the Japanese doing, why are they disrupting the American market. So he went to Japan to study this. He spent a lot of time in Japan, across a lot of companies, must have gone back and forth. They had these funded study tours during the late 70s and 80s, 90s from the US going into Japan. He came back, wrote two beautiful books. The first one, Japanese Manufacturing Techniques, somewhere in 1982, where he talks about some 8 or 9 principles that the Japanese use. 1986, I think he published his book called World Class Manufacturing. And after this book was published, the World Class Manufacturing, or WCM, the acronym, became the talk of every corporate, not only outside India, but even in India. Everybody wanted to become a world-class manufacturer. CII conducts an annual conference every year, and In early 1991, they invited this gentleman to come over to India and address the CII convention. So, when he came, he spoke about basically what the Japanese are doing. He gave to the audience the concept of just in time. I was not one of those who went to this convention. From my organization, you try to understand this, this is very, very important. From my organization, there were 4 people who went. My managing director, and then we had 3 vice presidents who were heading 3 manufacturing divisions. My role at that time was business development. I did not go, so the 4 of them, you know, the highest level of management in an organization, they went to listen to what this gentleman would talk to them about world-class manufacturing. So they came back, sat down and decided, they said, you know, this looks interesting, this looks different, this looks good. And they decided that they will implement this. They did not debut some of the managers. Hey, there's somebody coming and talking on world-class manufacturing. Go and listen and see what you can, you know, and come and do some experiments and try out whether it works or whether it doesn't work. No. Lean is like that. The education first needs to be at the topmost level. And then it needs to percolate downwards. So, they came back and took a decision, let's try this, let's do this. They then transferred me from my role of business development to head the operations and said, it's your baby, you have to implement this. The gentleman who handed over charge to me, who had attended this talk by Dr. Schoenberger, beautifully tried to explain to me everything that he had assimilated, you know, during that convention. What stuck with me, I mean, obviously he could not repeat everything that Dr. Schoenberger had said, but from what he narrated to me, there were 2 or 3 takeaways that stuck with me. The first was, you can change this time. The first was, just before I get to that, you know, I've spoken about this, but why did we need a different, you know, something different to look at? If you look at this recession, 1991, very bad recession. Not only was the recession very bad, but we were still reeling under the effects of 1982 that happened. What happened in 1982? A lot of our dealers in the Western world closed their dealership. We were heavy into exports. 90% of what we produced was exported to first world countries. USA, Germany, Canada, UK, and parts of Europe. We exported to about 43, 44 countries, but you know, almost 90% of what we exported or more went to these first world countries. And because of the recession, all these dealers that we had actually shut shop, they closed. So what happened to us? We lost all of that market, all of a sudden, gone. In the 80s, the domestic market was not capable of filling in that gap. Then comes the 91 recession. Bad. Almost, it drew us to closure. So there was a reason for us. Why? To look at something else. How to beat this trend? We can't keep letting the trends disrupt us always. Right? So, that was the reason why we looked at it. I've told you, you know, the why in Bridgeport. Why did we look at lean in Bridgeport? Right? So the 2 things or 3 things that actually stuck with me when my predecessor handed over this act to me, one was he explained to me, he said, look, the process of this just in time is like this. And he kind of made it simple in his explanation to me. He said, can you imagine a river? I said, yes. So he said, can you imagine some boulders in a river? Now please imagine as I say this. Can you imagine some boulders in a river? I said, yes. Then he said, ask me, when the water flows and there are these boulders, what happens? So I said, the water will hit the boulder, and as the water hits the boulder goes a little up because there is resistance. And then it will try to go around the boulder and flow. And then he asked me, now that you see these boulders, you take out these boulders. He said, can you take out these boulders? I said, yes, we can remove these boulders. Then he asked me, what happens when you remove these boulders? And I said, there is no obstruction, so the water will flow smoother. Then he asked me, yes, it will flow smoother, but will it flow faster? I said, yes, if there is no obstruction, it will flow faster. Then he asked me, if it flows faster, now there is no obstruction, will the level go down? I said, yes, the level will go down, now there is no obstruction. Then he asked me, what will happen after that? So I said, the water will continue to flow. He said, no, when the water flows and it goes down, you will see the next size of boulders. I said, yes. The next size will appear. Then he said, then what will happen? What do you see? I said, same thing. That water will hit the boulder, there will be a little rise in the level, and then it will go around it, etc. He said, then can you remove that boulder? I said, yes. Then if you remove that, what will happen? The water will flow faster, the level will go down, then you will see the next level of stones or boulders, then you remove that, and then the water will again flow faster, the level will again go down, and then you will see the next size of boulders or stones. So he asked me, do you know what this means? I said, no, because I didn't know this subject. Then he said, see, the water is your inventory. The boulders are the problems. As you go on solving these problems, the flow becomes faster, the level of inventory goes down. So these things are together. Solving problems, increasing the velocity, reduces inventory. That's all. There is nothing more that's actually needed to become lean. We use this all the time. We use this not only on the shop floor. Wherever we had a problem, whether it was in the HR area, sales area, purchase area, vendor, anywhere, we only thought, hey, there is a boulder, we have to remove the boulder. It became our language, it became our speak every day. And many times when he would call me and ask, what are you doing? I said, removing boulders. The only way to become lean. There's no big secret, there's no rocket science in this. It's absolutely simple. But it beats everybody. The other thing that he told me, and that stuck with me, he said, you see, when this flow is taking place, it must flow by exerting pull. It must flow by exerting pull. You must pull and make it to flow. It stuck with me. The second thing, you must pull and make it flow. I didn't know anything more about VIT honestly at that time. Nothing was written about this except Dr. Schoenberger's book, which also was not available in Hubli. I had to go to Bangalore to buy this book. I had to pre-order and buy this book. But we knew nothing. But I knew these two things. It's just on these two, understanding these two, that we built the entire journey. And what we did, how did we actually begin? Pull. He didn't say push. pull. What were we doing till then? We were pushing. How were we pushing? You know, we used to get customer orders. We had a department called Production Planning and Control, and they would, you know, take all the orders that come in. They would plan certain number of machines, batch, so, you know, this model so many numbers, this model so many numbers. And the whole process we would try to push the material from the back, and then the customer would ask for a change, and then we would get piled up with a lot of unwanted inventory, wasted inventory. We didn't have the right kind of material that was required for the orders that were there. We were in all kinds of problems. So we changed this. We said the only truth in the marketplace is consumption. There's no other truth in the marketplace. Consumption is the only truth. It is that consumption which pulls any and whatever material from wherever. Whether it is a retail store, whether it is, you know, manufacturing, whether it is a hotel, whatever it is. Consumption is the only truth in the market. Who decides on the consumption? The customer. What should we measure? We should measure the consumption. So we hit on a method how to measure consumption. First of all, what we did is we looked at what we were selling, execution. We took a span of 2 years, and then we found out over a span of 2 years what had the market actually consumed. We called it the sale rate, the rate at which we were selling to the market. Then we took the same 2 year span, we looked at all the orders that came in, and we worked out through a small algorithm the rate at which the orders came in to us. We call this the demand rate. And the demand rate is such a beautiful tool. It's like, you know, the magic ball. I could actually look into it and predict the future, what actually will happen. It is with that tool I was able to tell my managing director that we are heading for a closure. It never failed me, I can tell you this. I don't think it will fail anybody. So we call this as the demand rate. Now, in conventional manufacturing, these two never match, or they don't go close to each other. These curves don't follow each other very, very closely. Because the conventional way of manufacturing is a push manufacturing. Now, we found there was a gap between the demand and execution. The execution was always lagging. Sale rate was lagging, demand rate was leading. So we used another factor called the intrinsic capacity of the factory to deliver. So we used this intrinsic capacity of the factory to deliver, and using another algorithm, we worked out what we call a flow rate. Using certain judgment, we worked this flow rate out. Flow rate was the rate at which we allowed the material to flow into the organization and through the organization, and then our sale was governed by the flow rate. Now the job of the flow rate is to keep working the flow rate such that it will close the gap between the demand rate and the sale rate. Just look at this graph. This is an actual example. You know, just before the 2008 crash, I had done this exercise for a product making company. The yellow line you see is the sale rate. That is the actual dispatches the company was making. The yellow line. The red line is the demand rate. The rate at which the company was getting orders. So, we did this exercise somewhere in the month of April. You know, the crash I think took place somewhere in October. So we did this somewhere in the month of April. And in April I told them, I said, see, looking at your data, you guys have been taking in orders at a much slower rate, because in April, those guys were looking at the next new year and they were given a target, management by objectives, they were given a target by their MD that we are going to make so many thousand units or so many thousand equipment. I said it won't work. It's not going to work because this does not show me that it will work. And this has never failed me. So I said it won't work for you. Better don't go on your plan. Be realistic, look at this. Otherwise you'll have problems. And I went away. They didn't believe me. They went on their plan of those many thousands of numbers. Sure enough, this trend continued. They were not able to sell. They accumulated huge amount of inventory. And somewhere, a couple of months after the crash, they called me and said, what you had told us was right. We did a mistake by not listening to you. We should have listened to you. We are now stuck with this problem. Okay? So, it never fails. So, demand rate. The rate at which the demand is behaving, is changing. So, the trend will tell us what is likely to happen in the future. The only disruption that can be caused here is only in case of huge tenders, because a tender can give a large quantity order at one time. But barring that, this never fails. And if you factor that tender into this algorithm, you are absolutely safe. So you can keep varying your inventory as you pull from the vendor based on this thinking, this information. So this was one change that we made. Change from push to pull. We closed the production planning control department completely. Just one day, one stroke, one decision, one sentence, all. Close. No more production planning control department. Then we had to put this into action. We said, we will allow the customer to do our planning directly. Much of what I'm going to tell you is going to be unbelievable. Okay? That's how lean is. So we said, I'm going to allow customers to do our planning. How did we allow customers to do our planning? They will do our planning. They will tell us every day what to produce and we'll exactly produce that. And what are we producing? Complex machine tools, which has lots of parts, lots of, complicated processes, precision, stuff to be made. But it can be done. So how? So what we did, now see, try to understand this. It's not the tools. Tools are used to solve problems. So we had a problem. What to do? Which tool to use? How do we communicate now the customer's order into our manufacturing system? Something which everybody can understand. No students. So we designed the signaling system. We designed the Kanban system. We designed a simple card. Now when the customer's order would come, sales would write an order card. There was a designated place in the assembly area. The sales manager would go and insert the card in that rack. It was an open rack. The principle was FIFO, first in, first out. The assembly manager had no choice to pick any, no. He had to pick them serially, first in, first out, and execute. And from there, the order would go backwards. The order would go backwards to the suppliers, whether it was a machine shop or whether it was a vendor outside. Same way, he would then issue his order cards, to the suppliers. We integrated the storing system with the assembly. The assembly was the owner now. We didn't want too much of storage. but we had to store just what was necessary. So we integrated this with the assembly, removed it from the purchase department. Okay? So the assembly could control their incoming quality and quantity and become answerable for the inventory. Similar actions with the machine shop. So using this signaling system, the order from the customer now directly got translated, into requirements, went down to the supplier, and the material just flowed in. Now, who operated this system? When the sales manager went and put the card into the assembly rack, from that moment onwards, no supervisor, no manager would touch that card. They were not involved. It was the workman. We closed the inspection department. There was no, from then onwards, there was no inspection department. The idea was to implement Jidoka. At that time, we didn't know there was a tool called Jidoka, and the principle of Jidoka was this. But we knew, good thinking meant that if we had to produce quality, it had to be done at the place where it is being produced, and by the guy who is doing that particular work. Do it right the first time. So we said, from today there will be no inspection department. So we closed the inspection department, told all the operators that from now on you will have to inspect what you do, and you have to certify what you do. That's correct. And you have to take pride in saying, come and check my quality and find a mistake. And challenge us to find a mistake, and there should be no mistake. So we did this, and then we said, if we have to make the material flow, then we want to ensure that certain characteristics are correct, like all the input requirements are correct. So we had some manpower coming out of this inspection department. So we said, let's bring in a concept of process controllers with some new different thinking. And we said, what is the job of these process controllers? Now, imagine, there is a manufacturing cell, and this cell is, it's laid out, it's got certain machines, certain operators, etc. It's supposed to produce a set of parts. We want to produce quality not by inspection, we want to produce quality not by controlling quality, but we want to produce quality by improving the process through which this flows. So we said, at the input stage, before the very first stage, everything that we can call as an input will be checked and certified by the process controller. The drawing, whether it has the right revision number, whether the drawing is clear, legible, readable, the raw material in its spec, whether it is casting, forging, semi-machine, doesn't matter, whatever is in the form of incoming material, the tools that are going to be used, the gauges, are the tools ground if they have to be ground, the gauges, are the gauges calibrated, the machine itself, has the machine undergone preventive maintenance? And the operator, is he trained on that machine? So, if all of this is right, and and the process, is there a process written down? So if the process is right and all the inputs are right, if the men are trained, what you get at the other end should be right. So that was the principle on which we began to work. So that was a change, with the inspection. And now the workmen were enthusiastic to take charge. Now on one hand, I told them you are responsible for quality. On the other hand, I had told them, if you find something is wrong, stop the process and call me. So they had nothing to fear and they were very happy to implement this. And that was how we actually implemented Jidoka. When we moved the responsibility of stores, ordering, with the owner who used that material, which is the assembly or the machine shop, the purchase which earlier used to control stores, the stores went out of their domain. And so the purchase now had a new role to play. And the role of purchase was redefined. The role of purchase was now to work in developing the suppliers, reduce the number of suppliers, identify the best supplier, train the suppliers, on the concepts of how we are working, our signaling system, train them, teach them, help them. We even went to an extent of, arranging their layouts. We kind of help them maintain their machines, besides teaching them preventive maintenance. Okay? We looked after our vendors as our own. They were part of our factory. They were just located in a different place. We evolved a management information system. We called it a report card, which we would produce every week. And every week we looked at our own results. And this had all the measurements. So the first thing when the week began, Monday morning, me and my managers would sit down and look at our report card of the last week. How have we performed? We would then identify, are we doing all right in certain areas? Are we lagging behind in certain areas? What areas are, need some thrust, need more attention, more training? And then we would work on improving such areas. We also embarked on developing department manuals. We wrote the manuals in the way the department could be run in the best operating process. When when the requirement of ISO certification came, and because we were exporting, we had to get ISO certificate to be able to export to Europe. So, I must tell you this, we did not work on preparing for ISO as a big exercise. We knew we had to write a manual. We already had department manuals. We ensured that the clauses of ISO were included in that. Understand this clearly, our basic processes before we wrote our department manual, we worked our basic processes so well that it would beat an ISO. So when we had to apply for an ISO, and we were sitting in one of our MIS meetings that day, and then this subject came up that why not we get audited and see if we are fit to get certified. So I picked up the phone, I called TUV, and I asked them, I said, can you come and audit us? They said yes. So I asked them, when are you going to come? And they gave me a date, exactly 13 days from that day. And I said, all right, we'll complete the documentation before that. Please come, these dates are confirmed. All my managers were shell-shocked. They asked me, how can you confirm this? 13 days, there is no enough time. You don't have to worry. I know we are better than ISO. And I was traveling abroad after that. I was not going to be there for the next 8 days or so. And they said, even you are not going to be there. So what do we do? I said, don't worry. This is what we will do in these next few days. So I had a great team, So I said, this is what we will do. I called my MR, I said, let us start auditing every department every day or every alternate day. I said, try and do a few audits so people get the practice of being audited and ask questions. And in the process, if you notice that any correction is to be made, we get time to do the correction. In my heart, I knew we were far better than what ISO would expect. So I said, let's do this, and I went to it. I came back, the day came, few people came. In those days, a guy would also come from Germany, the managing director would come, audit. So they did the audit for 2 days. Thoroughly, they went around, every small place around the factory. And after 2 days, we sat down for the final meeting. And then they announced their finding. And he said, we're very happy to tell you that you are only the second company we are auditing. I'm very pleased to certify with 0 non-conformance. My point here is, don't focus, on many of these things. Like, we never focused on ISO. We focused on our basic process. We focused on basically being very. Everything I told you so far is a way how you decide on designing the journey for the organization. Okay? Now, I also told you, lean has to be led, cannot be delegated. Every day morning, 7:30, our factory would start, and I would be there much before. 15 minutes was the time I had allowed my managers to start up whatever their activity was. 7:45 we would meet. We called a stand-up meeting, it was a dispatch meeting, where we saw what we need to deliver the customer on that day. And we, used to find we were not able to deliver that day's requirement because there were so many problems which were not solved, there were hidden shortages. So when such a situation would come, either my supply manager would say, this is under my control, I will get it today, get it tomorrow, how it will not repeat happening in the future, etc. If I was convinced, I would let him handle it. If I was not convinced, I would say to him, let's go to this vendor. And it didn't matter where the vendor was. Whether he was in Hubli, whether he was in Harrier, whether he was in Belgaum, whether he was in Kolhapur, or wherever he was. I said, come, let's go. Just got into my car, we drove. There is a principle I learned later, through the Toyota production system. It's like it says, go to the Gemba and see what's happening. And that is what we were doing. I just went to the place where the problem was to see for myself what was this problem. What did I find? 90% of the cases, the reason for that problem was we. The way we had communicated, the way we had done something or not done something. So most of the time the improvement to be done was at our end, with our system, with our thinking, or with the way we did things. And to some extent, maybe sometimes with the vendor. Now in the process, I was able to spend time with him, understand his competence better, his attitude better, his attitude towards quality, his attitude towards maintaining timely deliveries, his attitude towards making improvements, solving problems, his appreciation towards what we were doing or what we were trying to do. A lot of things. It helped me later, when we had to rework our vendors, when we reduced from 178 vendors to 33 vendors. This helped me make some of those decisions because I had a first-hand feel and a first-hand eyeball with almost most of them. Now this is behavior. Who is trying to correct the problem? Did I just tell somebody go and see what's happening? My average work day used to be 12 to 18 hours or 12 to 16 hours. My average work day. If I was not going out to vendors, I was on the shop floor, going from one workstation to another workstation. What was I doing? Basically, I was trying to ensure that everything that happened on that workstation was happening with the best possible process. That was the way I looked at it at that time. The Toyota's tool terminology for that is standardization. In effect, what actually I was doing was standardizing. Okay? Who was doing this? And because I was there in the morning, what used to happen? My managers used to follow what I did. Their supervisors used to follow what was happening. The operators, they had a different level of enthusiasm because they were finding that I am directly working with them, which was something they had never seen before. And a lot of their enthusiasm on making these improvements came out in this process. What did it do? It multiplied the speed at which change could happen. I had to take a sabbatical. I had to tell my wife, forget me for some time, because you won't see me. And I used to live some distance away from the factory. And because my wife did not see me a lot at all, she actually shifted house. You won't believe this. She shifted house and came within a few hundred yards of the factory, hoping that she will see that I will come. I never used to go home for lunch. Most of the time I never used to eat lunch. The canteen would send me, some small little snack, make do. The workers would go to my wife and complain, you better take him for lunch, feed him lunch. The canteen boys would come and ask me, shall I send you a thali to the office? So she shifted house, came close to the factory, in the hope that I would go home for lunch because it is so near. Never happened. What I used to do, when my workmen were on the shop floor, I was there. We were making improvements. We were solving problems. Okay? We were talking about, whatever it involved, making design changes, design reviews, process reviews, training the people. We would have a lot of discussion with my managers. I would project a vision to them. This is what we have to do, we want to do, we can go there. We would try and cut a path. And when people would go for lunch, I would work on the papers. I was also responsible for marketing. And I was the only marketing guy in that company. I never had a department. There was only one. It was, getting orders was my job. I didn't have an assistant to do that. So when people went for lunch, I would sit and look at these papers. They came back from lunch. We got back to this business of making improvements, solving problems, drawing fishbone diagrams, training people, teaching them. Very soon, people did not hesitate to expose problems because they knew that the problems are now going to get thrashed out and solved. We started quality circles. The quality circles became so feverish. People were so involved. Usually the workmen don't stay after factory hours. They want to go home unless you pay them overtime. But my workmen came to me. Can we ask you something? I said, yes. You can ask me anything. You can walk in anytime into my office, discuss anything. Can we stay after 4 o'clock and solve problems? I said, yes. I said, but the HR is saying you have to go home, you can't stay after 4 o'clock. So I said, no, I didn't tell the HR. So then I called the canteen and said, make sure they get some tea, coffee. That was the level of motivation. That's involvement. When you have to change culture, you have to do. The amount of problems they solved, you saw the results. Would not have happened without them. my predecessors, I had seen them before me. When my earlier CEOs used to walk through the factory, they would not just do a factory round for the heck of doing factory round. They would go behind each machine, looking at all corners, paper here, oil is leaking here, there's chips fallen here. And they would, pull people up. So they had built a good culture of good cleanliness. Everything was, people were used to this level of orderliness, keeping things in the right place, etc. Much later, when I read through the books, I said, oh, Toyota calls this 5 years. It was, it was already there without actually going through this module describing this. It was a fundamental attitude, which I did every day on my morning walk. Now people knew that, and since I would spend so many hours on the shop floor, they knew that this fellow is going to live and nothing can be out of its place. There's no reason why something has to be out of its place. And when that happens repeatedly, the culture sticks, the behavior sticks. So what happened in this process? What was actually happening in this process? I was working with them, solving problems, standardizing the processes. The results we were getting was, I behaved the way they should actually behave. What did they do? Monkey see, monkey do. So what is so critical to becoming lean? Behavior, routine, what you do every day. We used to speak the lean language all the time. All the time. All the time. In the first shift, I worked with the workmen in the first shift. When the second shift changed, I used to work with the workmen in the second shift, the supervisor in the second shift. They also had to be trained. They also had to be told, what we have done in the other shift, what improvements we have done, what problems we have solved. And then, much later, I would go back into my office and deal with my papers. One day, after the second shift closed, it was about 12 o'clock in the night. The workmen came into my office and sat down. They said to me, if you don't go home, we are not going home. So how? You see, it's not talk, it's what you do. Leadership is by action. People don't listen to what you say. They look at what you do. So, what was I doing? Training. I trained myself, I trained them. In the process of training them, I retrained myself. I built people who could then do this training. You see, leadership is not a designation. Leadership is not a title. Leadership, in the Toyota production system, Toyota looks at a leader. Who is a leader? A leader is one who has imbibed the culture of Toyota, who is able to teach this culture to the others and train them to behave in accordance with the requirements of that culture. Because the lean, results require the backing of that culture. That culture requires that routine, that behavior. So, you should be ready to train. Learn, train, retrain. So what I did was more or less handheld training. And one of the reasons why I had so much confidence in our process, the example of ISO I gave you, that I almost did not have to work, because I had worked so hard on standardizing everything so much, and having been there, seen them duplicate, I exactly knew. Somebody came and told me something, I would say, rubbish. Never is it possible. If they tried to tell me something different, I knew exactly how each thing would happen at each workstation. Whether it was assembly or machining or supply chain, Exactly, I would know how things would happen. I was so sure, because I was so sure that these processes had taken root. And of course, I had a vision for the future, which I used to talk to my people. And that was about the market, the competition, our products and what somebody else is doing, where we are, where we want to go, and how is it possible, and what are we actually going to do? How are we going to go there? I used to actually get hold of our union leaders once in a fortnight or once in 3 weeks. They would sit down with me for about 20 minutes of a cup of chai, and I would tell them the whole thing, what's happening. I would tell them, what we are doing. And if there were some things that I wanted, a little faster pace to happen, I would tell them. I said, hey, look at, that area is not really picking up very fast. Have you guys gone and seen it? Why don't you help me improve that area a little faster? And they would go and, make sure that those guys would improve the pace a little bit. So it actually works like that. In this whole process, this principle of pull and flow, one of the two things that I understood, you must pull and make it flow. And this is exactly what, I taught everybody. Today, trainers will come and tell you value stream mapping. In those days, we called it layout changes. And who did this? Drawings. The workman would sit on the floor with a piece of chalk and tell me, sir, this machine we should shift here, this machine we should shift here. This machine has got this problem, that component requires this accuracy, this machine will produce that accuracy, so let's shift it from here, let's rearrange like this, so it will not crisscross, it will not, it will flow continuous. Let's make this into a U layout, not a straight line, this line is too long. What were they doing? Value stream mapping. Did they require somebody to teach them the module? It was good nobody taught us. If somebody had taught us, maybe we would never have become rich. It's not rocket science. It's easy. It's not in the tools. It's in the behavior. It's in the attitude. It's in the routine. It's in the change. Change always happens inside first. If it happens inside, it will happen around you. It won't happen around you unless it happens inside. So we created our sales as internal customer. We actually put them up on a pedestal. And we said, no matter what you ask, of course I taught them what to ask. We said, no matter what you ask, we will satisfy you. We empowered them completely. If a machine was completely certified by quality, ready for shipment, fit for delivery, and if my sales manager went and looked at something and he didn't like it, I said, you have the authority to stop it. Don't let it. Get it, redone to your level of satisfaction. And then let it go. So on one hand, the workman would stop the work. On the other hand, the sales would stop a machine if they were not happy. What did it do? Exposed more problems, which we solved. It improved our, customer rating, customer satisfaction index. Almost went close to 100. Every day, not every day, we didn't have complaints every day. We had very few complaints. Initially, they used to be there, but as we solved the problems, they were hardly there. But we said, if there is a customer complaint on that day, the department heads will leave all their work, sit and review the customer complaint. They will solve the problems using a fishbone diagram. Produce that paper, how to solve the problems, take actions. Within 24 hours, whatever is the corrective action, it needs to be discussed. Very important. One of the reasons why our customer satisfaction index went very high. The sales were allowed to rate the quality, like I said, they could go check any machine, stop it, ask it to be opened up if they wanted something, even if it was completely certified, fit for dispatch. Now, we had to systemize the way we work in sales. Because my sales department was more of an order execution department, and there were not too many people there. There was just a sales manager with a few staff who do the paperwork, registering an order, making a delivery note, making a packing slip. Okay? So there were just a few of them doing that. So I had to give them a system. So we wrote down sales policies. We wrote down 9 policies. 9 policies. And for example, when we put out our prices, there would be no discount. This was again the first time in the industry. Nobody had heard of anybody giving a price list or a quotation and the customer having no choice of negotiation on it. No. The reason was, you see, we had reduced our cost to a very great extent. When we priced our machine, we had a very fair expectation of profit margin, which was largely accepted by MD and the others. So we said, now this is the point at which we are ready to leave the order. So if you are not happy with this price, fine, you're free to find another machine. That was one policy. The second policy was that an order had to be complete in various aspects. It could not be left lingering. It had to come ready with a dispatch instruction, because my delivery times were very short. You can't give me an order and ask me to hold it. If you gave me an order, I have to dispatch the machine. If you gave me an order, there was a certain advance that had to come, and I would give you a delivery date. You had to finish making payment before that. So there were things like this. Had 9 policies written down. In the very beginning, there was a little bit of resistance from the sales force, from my distributors, from branches, that customer expects negotiations, etc. I said, you just tell him, we cannot go below this price. That's all. If you have to leave the order, you leave the order. And very soon, within less than a month, this kind of a talk died down, and then things settled down. So what did we do? We systemized the working. We applied our lean thinking in the sales process, and we actually made the sales process very lean. So the sales manager then actually had more time to be able to get involved in other important things like design reviews, quality reviews, stuff like that. And so these sales policies actually helped the sales manager do his dealer management. The dealer was also given, the guidelines of what he has to do, etc. But one thing we did, we treated a dealer like a customer when he came to our work, so when we interacted with him, absolutely. And I can tell you this, that every dealer who worked with us simply loved working with us. Implementing lean in the design area, I've already talked about what we did in terms of product design, but basically there were things in the design. What do you do in design area? If there is a change that is to be made, then how much time are we going to make this change? It's called an engineering change, right? Then how are we going to go through this process? How much time, etc. A lot of these things we made improvisations, cut short these times, made them more effective. Okay? And the tools of standardization, the tools of rationalization, all that, like I have explained in the morning, gave us this wonderful basket later, and the ability to develop new products at a very, 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 very short duration. There were other areas where we put lean thinking into work, and now the vendors, we actually trained all our vendors. You see, once 78 vendors, the numbers was brought down to 33. It's much easier to train 33 than 178. So we trained these vendors, with just in time, and they responded very well. They were able to behave in the requirements of just in time, what a just in time dealer should do. We ensured that they did not carry inventory for us. When they were not able to deliver, they were not carrying inventory and delivering from their inventory. They would produce against our signal and deliver. We also made sure that they got their payments in a very short time, like 4 days, like 7 days. We changed the performance evaluation of everybody on the HR side. We threw away the ABC kind of a rating. We started evaluating teams rather than individuals. Because the slowest paced person in a team would determine the result of the team. And our effort was to improve that person. So we did a lot of these things. The labor was very excited, very motivated. They were thrilled absolutely. From hostile labor, they became completely cooperative labor. There was not a single day I had any issue, any problem, any slowdown, any cool down, nothing. In fact, they volunteered to work extra without being paid for it. So this is basically, how to work with lean, how to succeed with lean. One of the reasons this won't be taught to you by many training organizations is they haven't done this. In Bridgeport, the challenges I had also was of, I had people from 6 or 7 different countries working there. And every fellow had a different kind of thought. And it is getting all kinds of cultures together in that Bridgeport transformation story I told you. Everything is possible. Electronica, amazing the way they absorb it and behave. Short time, tremendous results. So this is, by doing things like this, you become lean. Because becoming lean is changing behaviors, changing routines, adapting routines, planning routines that are required, doing things that are required to be done when it is required to be done, making sacrifices, staying committed, persevering, having faith. You are going to succeed. I had a lot of people tell me, Sanjeev, this is not going to work. This will work in Japan, but not in India. I could have listened to somebody else's opinion and failed. Becoming lean is an emotional journey, more than being an intellectual journey. It's here. From here you become lean, more than from here.